bring Mitch on so that we can figure out what all he is doing. And so here we go. Mitch London, welcome.
Hey, Zena, thank you so much. So excited to be here. It seems like this should have been happening. Like I was like, we got to get in touch. We got to connect. And so I'm glad this is finally taking place.
Yeah, it is amazing, to think that it was over a year ago that we met each other. And I don't, honestly, Mitch, I don't know where the year has gone. It's like it just flew by.
Hmm.
And and a lot's been going on, of course. And yes, I am so glad that it is finally here, and I get to hear even more about what you're doing, because even since we met, there have been some movement and changes in your life, your career, and all that too. And that's so very exciting. So, Mitch, tell us about who Mitch London is, and and why you do what you do.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I live in Colorado Springs, so you're talking about beautiful days. We have a lot of those here in Colorado, famous for our sunshine. We just don't get quite as hot as what you experience there. So that's what I kind of prefer. The mid 80s and lower, I love. Get into those 90s and hundreds, and I just don't function well. Um, but no, I'm a husband. I'm a father. I've got four beautiful children. I live here in Colorado. Ordained pastor. I've been in ministry. I kind of focus on three main areas of my life. It's marketing, ministry, and men. And so for my daytime, I work with an amazing company called Mark Hors. We focus on mid-market size companies, helping them to kind of get their ascension, retention, and lifetime value of customers going. Ministry side, I've pastored, I've had house churches, I've pastored full-time physical building churches, do a lot in ministry, and that's where my men focus really comes into. So about 5 years ago, I kind of received a call, a mandate to start to pursue men and to help them become more of who God has called them to be. And that's been my main focus over the last 5 years.
So that's awesome. And so, what was it that made you decide to really hone in and focus on men in the ministry?
It wasn't even, it was a God moment. So I was doing very well. I had my own marketing agency for the last 10 years. I was kind of doing things on my own, um, and making the money and having the trips and doing this different stuff. But there's that hole, that piece that says, there's something missing. You're doing great things, but are you making kind of an eternal impact with what the things you're doing? And so that was something that was just starting to gnaw on me. And so I'm an entrepreneur, so I've always got ideas. I had a couple businesses on the shelf of just like one day I'm going to get to those. Right now I'm focusing on something else. And it was like, okay, I just felt like it was time to start reevaluating. So for me, when I need to hear something, I go get quiet with God. I hop in my car. I like to go and drive and pray at the same time. So I took off in my car, and as I was going, I just see this vision of Goliath. And he's standing there on a hill, just like you would imagine Goliath being from the stories of the Bible, of being belligerent and tormenting and just intimidating. And this story and vision I saw, David was nowhere near. So this was not the showdown. This was not the time for Goliath to fall moment. What I saw was the army of Israel standing there paralyzed with fear. And I just heard the God speaking to me in the moment, saying, men are passive, they're stuck, they're paralyzed with fear, they forgot who they are. And I'm calling you to go slay this giant. And
Wow.
so for me, it was like this explosion of like, okay, I get this, I can do it, but how? How do I do this? And so there was a more story to that, but that's kind of the catalyst moment for me. It was just an interaction encounter with the Lord. That men today just have forgotten who they are. They're just the passivity. They're just stagnant. They're frozen. They can't make decisions. They're lacking certainty. So many things that we see in the world.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Mitch, coming from the woman's perspective side, and really watching, as things have progressed over the last several decades. I really feel like there is a real need for men to go back to who God intended men to be,
Hmm.
because we live in a culture where it is so confusing, on all levels, that that we don't understand why God created man, and he is different than a woman, and we're not supposed to be the same. But yet I feel like, and what I've observed is that for some reason there's a big portion of culture that seems to think we're supposed to operate in the same manner, and that seems to be the
Hmm.
message, and so just seeing this change, it has broken my heart. And Chris and I, as you know, we do a lot with marriages. That's the ministry that God has placed on our hearts. And so one of the things that we had done earlier on in our marriage was go through the Love and Respect series with Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. And he talks about men and women being so different from the very beginning, and how even as mothers raising our children, like it was like a big light bulb for me. And I was so glad that I went through this series when my children were still small. But he really emphasized how even mothers, the way we raise our sons needs to be different, that we cannot feminize them, that many women don't realize it, but we expect our sons to function like a woman. Hey, look at me when you're talking to me. And he explained, well, for a woman, we need eye to eye contact to feel like somebody's listening to us. But in the man's kingdom, uh, that's like a fight or flight issue. Like that's hey, look at me, and we're engaging in a really intense conversation. And he goes, and that's why you'll see most men walk away when things are getting intense. They don't want to look at you in the eye, because to them they're like, I don't want to engage in this. We're not going there. But a woman feels like, oh my gosh, how can you walk away? We're having this conversation. And when he kind of displayed that picture, it was like, oh wow, I had no idea that was, really from the very get-go, God designed us so differently, and he meant for it to be different. And we need to embrace those differences. So Mitch, I applaud you for listening to the call that God has placed you. And I love that the vision he begins was with Goliath, because when you think of the story of David and Goliath, you have to have a Goliath in your life. That's a part of our lives. And many of us try to avoid it. And like you said, you saw men kind of almost cowering away, or not feeling like, okay, I'm going to take on this Goliath. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm going to, just maybe if I'm quiet enough, he'll go away.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, well, we all face it. The story of Goliath, it was a daily torment, twice a day. He would come up morning and evening, and he would torment, and he would just belittle and mock the men of the country. And they're looking to their leader, and their leader's not moving. And they're looking to each other, and nobody else is stepping up. And it kind of becomes that group psychology of, well, nobody's doing anything, and who's going to be that brave one? And I love the fact that when David did show up on the scene, the thing that he said is there not a cause? And I love to study the roots and the Hebrew and all the different original meanings of the words. And when he says, is there not a cause? It was saying, is there not an established promise of God? Has he not already said that these guys are trespassing in our land? Has he not already said that this battle's finished? But just take somebody to have that position, that identity, that confidence in who they are and whose they are, how they were created and who they serve, to come in and change an entire scene. And so if we can get men to come into that understanding and to step into their home with an understanding of God has ordained certain orders, certain structures, certain relationships, just like what you were saying. If I'm not doing my duty, then my wife has to do something she's not designed to do. She wasn't meant to be. She's not equipped in the same way that I'm equipped. And I'm not equipped in the same way to nurture my kids and those types of things that she is. So it's not one is better than the other. We just each have a very specific role.
Mm-hmm.
If that is missing, nature abhors a vacuum. Something has to fill it. And so now people are out of alignment. And so nobody likes to be out of alignment. That's why chiropractors are so popular. When something's just not feeling right, it just nags on you. And so it creates bitterness, resentment, all those kinds of things I'm sure that you've learned and that you teach with the marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be in alignment. You have to be living in the design and the assignment and the purpose that God has given each and every one of us. And we have lost that, Mitch. You are so right on when you say that. Now, Mitch, you have children yourself.
I have four. 2 girls, 2 boys, 17 and 15 and 13 and 9.
Wow. So you've got a whole age range of
Yeah.
of kids there. That's awesome. And you said there were boys and girls?
So my 2 oldest are girls,
Okay.
17 and 15, and my 2 youngest are boys. So 13 and 9 are the boys.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's fun.
Yeah. No, they're wonderful kids.
Yeah, and that probably, I would imagine, has helped you to really, as you are in this ministry with the men, it probably has really helped inspire you and see just the differences between girls and boys from the birth. Because I saw that. I have a boy and a girl, and from the very moment they were born, they were very different.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's they teach you so much, and so anytime that you're learning, that you're trying to impart messages to somebody, you kind of have to walk through it first before you can actually apply it to your life. So producing fruit is usually best when you're trying to figure something out. A lot of times in the world that we live in right now is that you'll go to a retreat or a mastermind, or you learn this some new trick or principle from a guru, and you just want to apply it right away, and now you become an expert, but you haven't taken the time to actually produce fruit. And so I call it guru hopping, or just chasing principles, because everybody's got a secret somewhere, a secret sauce to do something. Same thing with marriage, same thing with relationships, where somebody did something and it worked, and now they want to teach you the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But there's a process to actually cultivate that in your life. How much weeds are in your garden? Are you giving proper nutrition? What's the quality of the soil that the seed is being planted in? There's so many other factors to actually produce fruit in somebody's life. So as somebody who's called to serve men, to help lead and guide men, there's a lot I have to go through. There's a lot of unlearning I have to go through. There's a lot of things from my childhood, from my relationship with my father, all this stuff that I'm like, okay, I thought it was, but now I'm really getting corrected, and I'm seeing the fruit of this is not working out well with my own children. I have to realign. I have to find out what is actually the right way to do stuff.
So what you're saying is that you were not, you didn't have all the wisdom when you got married, and then when you had kids, it just wasn't there yet. It's been a process. Is that what you're saying?
I've always loved kids. I've always was kind of ahead in that. So my older brother, he's 10 years older than I am, and he had kids. So I was an uncle at 10. And I started babysitting. I started helping to raise my nieces. I have two nieces. One, I was 10 years old in one, and then I was 12 years old when my second niece came. And so I've always had that kind of nurturing, kind of fathering type of anointing on my life. But you have a lot of unlearning to do. There's a lot of things that you think by default. So in my programs, I talk a lot about your default identity, that there's just things that have happened throughout your entire life, the way your family always does stuff, that forms who you are. And if you don't take a moment to stop and question, why do I do the things I do? Why do I believe the things I believe? You're going to continue on a default path, and default paths never lead to the destiny that you're trying to reach. And so you have to kind of take a moment and say, all right, Lord, where am I at? Where can I see an example of a godly man? Where can I pursue a father as a son, whether that's your own father, your biological father, or a spiritual father or a mentor in your life, where you can say, I need to pursue, I see that you have something on your life that I need. And so there's shifts and there's dynamics, but all of that leads to choice. And you have to be intentional with that. You can't be like that army of Israel who's just standing by waiting for somebody to do something for you. You kind of have to step out onto that field.
Wow, that's good. That's good stuff, Mitch. Yeah, you're right. There's so much that shape us that we don't even realize. Like you talk about the default personality, the default view that we have of ourselves, and that many times we don't even realize it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And and I hear so many times, it's the way I was born. It's just the way I am. And it gets us like, well, not really. First of all, when you say that, that means you don't want to take the responsibility that you can change. This is just the way I am. Accept me, dude. Right?
Yeah.
I want you to love me, as who I am. But you're like, but God has designed you. Actually, God designed you um, in a way that you haven't discovered yet. Like that is not, the way you were born. That is just the way that you have been, I guess, quote unquote, programmed. And the reality is that those programmings came from generations ahead of, my father, was fathered by his father by his father, and those things were passed down. The things that we think, and not only that, too, Mitch, culturally, you know,
Mm-hmm.
things have shifted and changed. Not that our design is different, but the way that we view things. Our great grandfather, the way he ran his family and the way the culture was is very different than what it is today. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like you said, there's cultural, there's things. How many different people speak into your life in your entire lifetime? I mean,
Mhm,
just think about that. How many different people have a voice, have a say on who you are and who you're becoming, even before you reach adulthood?
mhm,
You have teachers, you have friends, you have family members, you have religious people, and there's so many different things, entertainment, just your culture, regional, even within cultural, from Arizona. I grew up in New Mexico. That's a weird kind of a thing, but you can always recognize somebody from New Mexico. It's like this weird kind of like knowing, like you're from Albuquerque. I know it. Like I am, and it's just this kind of a weird thing. There's just something about us, and so I talk a lot. Bible talks a lot about your walk. How you walk speaks before you do. How you're living your life speaks before you do. And so how that is shaped, how that is going, is there's just so many voices that you have to filter through at some point in your life and realize those were wrong and I believed them and that's on me because I believed it. Nobody else. You got to take accountability and responsibility for that.
You brought something up. You know, you even talked about a spiritual mentor and a spiritual father that can have influence in your life that sometimes you have to undo.
Hmm.
That can be tough for a lot of people because, you know, if you brought up in a church and, you know, the pastor, you know, grilled in you, this is what a man looks like, or this is what it's supposed to be. And yet it may not really fully align with really, you know, what God has designed you to be, Mitch London, in with your family. Because let's also face it, your family is going to be unique also to my family. Granted, there are some straight across, this is the way men are supposed to be, but when it comes to individual, how do you meet the needs of your wife and your children? Well, your children and your wife have very different needs than, you know, let's say your pastor may have, you know. And so we have to learn to filter through that too. So Mitch, how does one really do that, and to know, okay, this is the right path that God wants me to do, but my spiritual leader says, um, you know, it's slightly different. Like, you know, how does somebody, I guess, bring that together? And it's not necessarily wrong. It's just different and not necessarily out of God's alignment. It's just what, you know, I mean, as a pastor, because now I'm going to ask for Pastor Mitch now, how do you counsel somebody on that?
It's a different dynamic. So a lot of times from what I've seen, I've had a lot of bad mentors. I've had a lot of bad spiritual fathers, people who have abused the relationship, abused the authority, and there's always lessons to learn. Some of the indicators that I can see is when you come into a relationship in receiver mode only, you typically it's going to misalign because now you're into people pleasing, you're into the posture is going to be different. Um, as a man pursuing a father, it is our job and biblically kind of laid out for us to pursue and to honor. We see the example of Jesus. I only do what my father says. The role of the son is to help fulfill the call of the father's life. And so that's what we see in the patriarchal system throughout the Bible and throughout the system, what Jesus modeled for us. What many sons do is they want somebody to exalt them. So we think of like more of that prodigal son story of somebody who says, hey, I just want what's mine. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want all of the warm fuzzies lavished upon me. I'm not looking for a mentor. I'm looking for somebody to be kind of like my pump up guy, somebody to just encourage me and tell me I'm awesome and not really correct me and grow me and stuff. When you can enter into a relationship knowing it's my duty to honor, regardless of the vessel. If the Lord has positioned me with somebody, and I got a big, I call it a spiritual spanking, I have a huge conviction moment over this one time. Is I was praying to God and I was like, Lord, you know, I was praying about a certain issue in the life. It may have been financial or something at that time. I was like, Lord, I'm looking for these answers. How come you're not answering me? Show me the wisdom. And he's like, I've sent people into your life and you've rejected them because of how they treated you. And that hit me so hard that the vessel, I was judging the vessel and not the blessing that the vessel was carrying. And so God always blesses his people. Like just about any time that you can see, he does it through people. He blesses his kids through his other kids. And so when you're looking at somebody and say, okay, there's somebody in my life, a spiritual mentor. One, what's my heart posture? Am I there just to try and get praise, to get somebody to tell me I'm good, to reaffirm an insecurity that I have in my life? Or am I there to learn to serve and to honor? I need to learn to be a son before I can learn to be a father. And it's often in that process of learning to submit yourself, especially if you don't agree with everything they say and do. That's when it's really tested. It's easy to honor when you agree with somebody 100% of what they're doing. But when you have to honor, because that's what we're called to do, even when you don't agree with everything they're doing, you have to remind yourself that they're accountable to the Lord. You're not responsible for their actions, but you're responsible for your honor to them. The Bible shows us examples of how you lose out blessings by not being in honor and how it removes the opportunity for this different stuff. So, Pastor Mitch comes into this. If you have a situation, one is check your heart. Are you there to serve? Are you there to not receive, not get poured into, not worry about you, but you as a son or daughter to a father or mother? How are you looking to serve that person? Are you walking in honor, and are you doing the honorable things? Or is this a transaction? Is the relationship more of, well, I'm going to do nice things for you, so you do nice things for me, and maybe you'll help position me and elevate me and put me in a better spot? Most of the bad situations, it's more of that. There's more of just trying to kind of selfish gain motives in there. They may not be strong, but subconsciously you're hoping for some kind of benefit out of it. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, and that was great. That was great, counsel there, and you're right, many and that's kind of the American, culture too, is that we are consumers. That we come to church, we come to do things to consume.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you'll see that the majority of the church aren't serving. It's a very small percentage of the church that actually is in service. It's the same people over and over again doing the same stuff, the different ministries and things. But we do have a consumerism mentality. And when it comes to even coming into the role in a relationship, we have that tendency to be a consumer in our relationship. Well, if you're not making me happy, then I'm out of here. And many times people don't realize, well, that's not what that intention that God put us together was, not so that you could be happy, although happiness will come and joy will come. But really, it's to serve one another. It's to learn how to be like Jesus to one another. So you put it very beautifully, Mitch, is that many times it's just real coming in with a different uh, viewpoint, having a different heart about the matter, and being open to receiving what God has for you in that time frame. Something that you said earlier too, that you've had many spiritual mentors, and some of them were not so great. And so in this, well, and I only ask this because there are people who've gone through this and they've been hurt by the church, they've been hurt by spiritual leaders, and so it breaks my heart when that happens. First of all, we're all humans and we're sinners and we are imperfect. And like any family members, at some point, somebody's going to hurt you, not by
Mm-hmm.
intention, but sometimes it just happens. Um, but what makes me sad is the person that says, forget this. I'm never going to church again. I'm not going to be in fellowship. I'm not going to sign up for this wilderness adventure with Matt because I've been through the men stuff and I've been hurt over and over again. So how do you speak to somebody who may be experiencing that, Mitch, as you come across and you've got these great wilderness retreats coming up, and they're like, Mitch, I've been there, done that, has done nothing for me. And as you dig deeper, it turns out they were really hurt by somebody in the past. And how do you help them come through that?
Yeah, the main thing, and with everybody we have to deal with, is when you harbor forgiveness or unforgiveness, it creates just a poison in your life. It brings torment into your life, and it doesn't do anybody any good. And so, really, I mean, usually there's more underlying issues. If you get hurt that way, it's probably there's a pattern of it. It's probably happened multiple times. And so we want to look at, why does this keep happening multiple times? Are we seeking to please other people? Are we seeking praise? I can only affect and change what I think and do. I can't do that to the other person. So I have to look inward and say, okay, what is my role? What is my responsibility? How did I contribute to this relationship? And if I can get honest, because anytime that you consider yourself a victim, you've taken away complete control and authority away from yourself. And now you're just at the whim of whatever the circumstance is. But when you can say, no, I contributed, there was things I did in this relationship that probably weren't the best also, you can start to have ownership and authority back in changing that and then fixing the heart and bridging those gaps. And so it's really diving in and say, let's get honest. Can we just call ourselves on our BS, please? And say, yeah, they may have done bad things to you, but where have we allowed it? Did we not set boundaries? Did we allow these things to be happening? Where is it that we had a choice in this, made some choices? Now, we can't, again, I'm not saying it's your fault that somebody did something to you, but we all contribute to different situations. Of course, I'm sure people are going to watch this. There's extremes. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Hear what I'm saying. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But there's moments, and we have to take accountability is my biggest point, is you owned some part of this. You contributed to this. So I teach a lot on strongholds, on the things that we do with our words, with our actions. People, what you're explaining, they often set up, brick by brick, they build this wall of protection around themselves, and they view it as this wall of protection. But when you're on the outside, you say, man, you just built yourself a prison cell. You can't see it because you're on the wrong side of the wall. But what I see is now you are enclosed, you're encased, you're stuck, you're in bondage, you're in prison. Until you understand and realize that you helped lay some of those bricks, you're not going to get out of there. You have to own that and say, okay, yes, I did contribute. And now we can start to move forward. We can start to undo some of that damage and tear down those walls and allow you to walk in more freedom where these hurts, these offenses, these different things don't sway you. They don't move you anymore. You can just release and forgive and move on.
Mm, that's great. Good stuff. Good stuff, Mitch. Uh, so tell us a little bit about what goes on these men's wilderness retreats. What is it? How many men attend? How long is it? And where do you hold these retreats?
Yeah, so I've done them in New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming so far. I have three different types of retreats. They started off with the inaugural one was a backpacking event. And so what you can carry is what you got. We hike into the backcountry here in Colorado, no cell phone service. There's bears, there's wildlife, elk, all kinds of stuff that's out there. And we get away from the noise and we hit the reset button. And so those are 3 days or 4 days, 3 nights. I limit those events to about 12 people just because of footprint and logistics. And there's a sanctity, there's an intimacy that happens. One of the best places I have seen for men to retain strength while also being vulnerable is around a campfire. As a leader, I don't have to facilitate. I don't have to ask questions. I don't have to draw anything out. If I can gather men around a campfire, watching the flames, they're going to tell you whatever's on their heart or they're struggling with. It just inevitably, it all just comes pouring out. You just be sitting there in silence for about 5 minutes and somebody says, okay, I need help. And it just, here it comes. It's like the wall is melting before them. And so a campfire is just a place where men still feel strong, but yet they can talk about the hard things of life. So I do those here in Colorado. I've done those in Wyoming as well. We've done some retreats with cabins, or like Airbnb style, and that's a little bit more kind of mastermind-ish. Sometimes, more of a retreat than a wilderness experience. Still get outside, still enjoy the nature, but there's a little more creatures of comforts and those kinds of things that are there. Not everybody is up to physically or comfortable with getting out in the backcountry that way. And then I also do group camping where you can drive your car right up to the site. You can bring that comfy air mattress. We're still camping, but it's kind of, glamping more of the style. And that's kind of more introductory to the wilderness of people who are just trying to get used to it. I found many men have not had fathers take them out and teach them survival, to teach them to be capable men who can handle themselves, their families, and handle anybody that they come across while they're out exploring nature. And so we teach those types of things as well, survival skills and wilderness skills, as well as those biblical principles.
That's awesome. It sounds like a great adventure.
Yeah.
Uh, and to not have your cell phones right there is a whole different ball game these days. You feel so vulnerable, so naked, like
Yeah. Yeah.
something. And I think, gosh, how did we get there? Because when I grew up, there were no cell phones. It didn't happen
Right.
in my late 20s. So, and now it's
I know.
attacked.
I think I was around 20. My first cell phone was probably in 2001 is when I got my first cell phone.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to put this website up for those of you men and even women that you're listening and you're thinking, gosh, my husband, this would be a great, great thing for him. Go to the website and get some information and get a hold of Mitch and sign up. It sounds like an amazing time of fellowship, new discovery. And I love that you are absolutely just, I guess what you say, fasting from the world is really what it is. You're
Mhm.
just going on this fast from the world and just having some time with men who love the Lord, who want to grow in the Lord, and then others who have the same goal. You just know that there's something more that God has designed you for, and it's not even for those that have no idea. It sounds like it. This is even for men who really feel like they've been doing well. I mean, it sounds like a thing that you're going to improve no matter where you are at in life, no
Yeah.
matter what you've discovered, no matter how much you've learned, that this is a situation where you get into it, you're going to grow regardless. So no, I don't think anybody's beyond just add wilderness is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have executives, we have leaders, we have pastors, we have lots of men who are various stages. I had one gentleman show up who had never, who was not baptized. He was still learning about Jesus and what was this whole religious thing about. I'm like, how did you get here? I interview people before you come, and he told me he wanted to learn about identity in Christ. I guess I never thought to ask him, do you have a relationship with Jesus? But he showed up, and it was just this amazing thing. And he ended up getting baptized, and ended up kind of walking at it, and it totally transformed his trajectory in his life. But all of us have foundations, and as God is calling us and growing us to be able to handle what God is wanting to do in our lives, we have to have foundation checks. Are things still good? We see this right now so many times. How many leaders are falling? About 18 months ago, the Lord told me it's a foundation inspection season. If a house, this, you're in real estate. If you get an inspection and the foundation is compromised, what happens to that house?
Yeah, not so good.
You'll
Exactly.
get condemned real quick. You'll
Mhm.
get that house gets shut down. And about 18 months ago, I was praying, and the Lord was telling me it's foundation inspection season. He's checking the foundations. So as men, it's on us first. We know this. Chris knows this. It's part of what our responsibility of how we've been made. Make sure the foundation is right, so that what God is trying to build upon in your life, it can be supported.
Mhm. Yep. And yeah, and if the foundation, and there are situations that the foundation is not doing well, you absolutely can fix it. Takes
Mhm.
work. You gotta put the muscle into it and get it done. And so yeah, yeah, you've got to redo it, make sure it's on a firm foundation. Yeah, I love it, Mitch. So you have other people coming out to help you on these retreats as well?
Yeah, I'll have, depending upon the group size, I'll have other facilitators with me. My next one is actually in August 18th through 21 here in Colorado. We'll be up by a town called Leadville. It's actually the highest incorporated city in the whole U.S. So the town sits up above 10,000 feet. Every one of these adventures, we find amazing wildlife. We've had a bear show up each and every time. And so it's fun to kind of see guys who've never experienced that out in the wild. And just there's something that awakens inside of you when you're out there and you see these things.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So so do you also take some of your kids with you? Your two little, well, I guess they're not that little anymore, but your boys with you on these trips too?
Not on these ones. These ones are specifically for men, but I am building out the kids version of this. And so
Okay.
that is part of my heart, is teaching kids survival skills. And I did it with my own to begin with, is when I take them on my crazy adventures, and if dad happens to trip and fall and hit his head, or, sprain an ankle, and I can't get out, are my kids going to be okay? Are they going to be able to survive till help comes? Are they going to be able to help me survive if, God forbid, something happens and I'm unconscious or something when we're out? And so
Mhm.
each of my kids know how to survive. They know how to start a fire. They know how to build a shelter. They know how to purify water. They know how to, make themselves known so somebody else can help them. And so those are just life skills. The more confident I can help kids and men be, the more they're going to experience life in the wilderness and the nature together. And so
Yeah.
I've got some plans for some pretty cool stuff, some treasure hunts, some different things where as families, you go out, you do an activity, you post pictures of it and say, hey, we went kayaking together. And then I'll send you in the next clues. So I'm leading you to a treasure as you're doing activities together.
Wow, that's awesome. So Mitch, you've got an upcoming book.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So the book, that is such a fun process. I don't know if you've tried writing a book, if you've gone through that process yet, but it is so revealing, and it's something that just you get purified in a whole new way when you start to write a book. It's called Gravel, Grit, and Glory: Navigating Life's Wilderness. That book is really about our walk, but my desire is to kind of help impart permission into men, as each one of us is on kind of a challenging journey, and just champion you and say, yes, you can do this, and you're going to have obstacles, and this is what to do when these obstacles show up. And so the book is written in correlation to a wilderness adventure I had with some friends in my teens, and we were climbing a mountain, and there's different aspects of this whole trip that we encountered. And so each chapter talks about a different aspect of this trip, and then breaks down some biblical principles and life principles that you can apply to your life, and how to navigate the terrain and the different things that we're going to face as each of us are climbing our different mountains.
Wow, that's awesome. So gravitygritandglory.com/pre-launch, you guys, to get a copy, to pre-order your book, to get information. You don't want to miss out on this. This sounds like a really great book. I'm excited for you. Really excited that God placed
Thank
it
you.
on your heart to do, and that you were obedient and doing it. And yes, I'm Chris and I are in the process of writing a book, and you're right. It is a really and I'm finding that whether you end up publishing the book or not, it is very, like you said, revealing. God really speaks as you're seeking and searching, and it's an interesting experience for sure. But I'm so glad that you're going to share this with other people. Um, and I think, I guess it's kind of like if God places on your heart to write a song, you might as well share it and see where it lands. It's not for your glory anyways. It's just
Right.
you,
Right.
being and getting it out there. And you never know, even if just one person reads it and their lives are changed. To me, it's worth it. It's worth that impact. You just never know how, any of that gets used. So, and I know we live in a world where it seems like everybody is an author or wants to be an author and that sort of thing. And you can easily say, well, they just want the limelight. But I know for what you were saying, it's not about that at all, because it's a pretty tedious thing to do, especially when you're working full time, building this men's ministry, environment. I mean, and raising 4 kids, and tending to the needs of your wife and all of those things. It's not like you need one more thing to do. So this isn't about Mitch London, is what I'm saying, guys. Get this book, because you are going to be impacted, because the Lord has spoken, and he's just being obedient. So absolutely. Gravel, Grit, and Glory.com/, pre-launch. I did put it in the chat or in the comment section as well. So be sure to click
Yeah.
on
Thank you.
that. Mitch, so you're almost really ready to completely launch it. So that's exciting. So probably in the next few months here, it's probably really going to be completely available to purchase, but they can get the pre-launch right now. I just wanted to clarify, correct?
Yeah, pre-launch. So you sign up for the list. Right now, the editing's finalized, so it's just formatting right now, and then we'll submit it to the publisher to start getting advanced copies, and to have the Kindle versions and the physical prints ready to go. So we're very, very close to launching it. And it's like you're birthing. It's like you've got a baby that you're bringing into the world. And this is all from personal experience. So it's revealing stories, it's revealing testimonies, it's reliving and rewalking past hurts and past offenses. And sometimes you go through this process and realize I still need some more healing in this area. This is still kind of irritating me some. And so it reveals a lot within you. And so I hope that as you kind of put together that blood, sweat, and tears, and you pour your spirit into something like this, that it releases that same message to other people.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubts that it's going to really impact a lot of men. Mitch, I have another question. So you,
Mhm.
as a father of 2 girls, 2 boys, as you are raising, okay, we're going to start out with, as you're raising your daughters, because they're the 2 older ones, and you are showing them what a man um, is like, and who, because when we think of our daughters, we think of who they're going to marry, right? That's a big thing that we have in our life. And when that time comes, we want them to be with somebody who absolutely understands, what that leader in that role is supposed to be. How are you helping your daughters to really be able to look at the future and look at, I guess, finding their husbands, as a
Yeah,
father, helping them?
no, that's a great question. And I start with affirming who they are. And so it's all about they have to be confident in their identity. If they're seeking to fulfill a piece of them in somebody else, then they're going to find unhealthy relationships. And so as long as my girls know and they're confident in who they are and who they've been called to be and their uniqueness and their differences and what makes them special and what makes them quirky, and they can own it and they don't have to feel shame about any of that kind of stuff, it positions the relationships in the future much healthier. They have a relationship with their heavenly father. They know Jesus. They know how to pray. They don't question coming to mom or dad for advice. And so it's just going to help them skip a lot of the mistakes that I made, that my wife made, that a lot of us make when we're trying to seek validation, when we're trying to seek something else outside of us in another person to fulfill the thing that they just shouldn't be filling. That's not their job to fulfill that. And so that would be my main thing, is just make sure that you affirm your daughters, that you help them feel confident and beautiful of who they are, how they were created, and to embrace their uniqueness as they're discovering what that is. It's going to change from their toddler years into their preteens, into their teens, and now I've got one who's going to be turning 18 in December. And so it's different phases, and they're finding different elements of themselves. And so allowing them the grace and the space to experiment with, who am I? What are the things that I like? And they do that in a godly way, and it's just something that it's beautiful to watch. So I don't necessarily, of course you have the dad stuff where they're going to meet me and we're going to have a talk and we're going to have approvals and disapprovals. I'm still your parent. I have to help guide you. A lot of times emotions can kind of make you see things you don't necessarily. There's blind spots, I'll say that. Emotions create blind spots. But I'm confident, watching the decisions they make now, watching their discernment that they have, watching the judgments of saying this is right, this is wrong, that they're going to make those right choices when it's time.
That's powerful, Mitch. It's very powerful, because you are right. When a young lady isn't confident in who God has purposed her to be, it is a recipe for a mess, and you do end up in an unhealthy relationship. And yeah, I love that. So okay, so now how are you preparing your young men um, for adulthood, to become the man of God, to become the Davids, of
Yeah.
of this time?
For my young boys, my young men, I focus a lot on honor. And this is how a man acts. And I have to show them how to do that. This is how you treat your wife. This is how you treat your sisters. This is how you handle the situation. Even when your feelings, and when you're feeling slighted, or you're feeling, like you got taken advantage of, it's how we respond to things that is going to help us in our growth. And so I believe a strong man is a man under control. Not that you don't have strength, that you don't have those kinds of things, that you have it all available, but it's always under control. And so I help them when they're frustrated, when their emotions of, this is the way that we act in this situation. And that takes a little bit more direct conversations with my boys than I have with my girls. The girls, it's a little bit different as far as the dynamic, but with the boys, it's very much of saying, this is the way we act as men. And this is how we treat people. We don't do that. It's kind of very much showing them how to make those right decisions.
I love that. And that, when you were saying that, it reminded me of when um, our son was about 7 years old, and I was hanging out with my girlfriend and her kids. And so the two boys were, I guess, fairly close in age. Anyways, they all kind of were out by the golf course, and I guess some girls walked by, and these are, 7, 8-year-old boys. And I guess they were doing cat calls, whistling, cat calling. And so their sisters, of course, came and tattled, you know, Max and his friends were whistling and saying all these things to the girls and blah, 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 blah. And my girlfriend and I looked at each other like, oh, how are we going to handle this? Like, first of all, you had to try not to like laugh in front of them or smile, because you're like, that's kind of, you can imagine. And I just pulled it together. And I think God just gave me the words at the moment. I said, son, I said, that's not how you treat girls. And he goes, what do you mean, mom? I said, it's not appropriate. I said, your job as a boy, as a, and you grow into a young man, your job is to make a girl feel beautiful. And I'm gonna tell you, yelling out those things does not make her feel beautiful at all. It doesn't honor her. It doesn't do any of that. And he still kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about, mom? Because all my friends are, doing it, kind of thing. I said, well, let me ask you this. How would you like it if somebody did that to your sister? And he's all, I said, okay, how about your mother? And he's like, I said,
Yeah.
okay, then this is not okay. Now, there are other ways you can show that you appreciate the beautiful creation that God, put on this earth, but that is not the way you do it. And so when my husband came, I don't know, maybe an hour or so later into it, and so, we tell him what had happened. My husband, same thing. He pretty much said, son, that's not how you treat women, that you need to make them feel beautiful. And, that's not the action. That's not the words. That's, there are better ways to do this, um, and, and I know that, in that time, I'm sure it was very impactful, because I don't think he ever did it again. So, at least
Yeah.
it's pause. But those are moments that, when culture and society do it one thing, because, that's what they see on TV, and that's what they see their friends and brothers or whatever doing. So they think that's the way you're supposed to treat, the opposite gender. So, yeah. So when you were saying all that, yeah, you're absolutely right. You got to start from the very beginning, showing them what does that look like, and what does that not look like.
Yeah, absolutely. As men, we have to have certainty, and certainty brings a lot of confidence in relationships around you. And so, as a father, you have to have non negotiables. And that's what you do as you're fathering other people is say, these are non negotiables. We're going to cut this off really quick because there's not a negotiation of whether this can or cannot happen. It can't. And
Mhm.
so this is a place that it just is an off limit zone. We don't do that. So let's just get rid of this right now. Let's explore why we thought it was okay. But this is a non negotiable area. And having that certainty as a man, as you're fathering, as you're leading, brings so much more peace into the relationships that are around you.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know what it's like in your household, but it really, it warms my heart. So my son is younger than my daughter, so kind of, similar to your boys are younger than their sisters, but he was very, very protective
Hmm.
over his sister. And I remember him also telling me she was probably in the fourth grade or something, and he'd be like, "Mom, I just hated that Sissy's really cute." I said, "What?" I said, "Are you saying you wish you had an ugly sister?" And he goes, "Well, it would be a lot easier." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he's all, "Well, all the boys are flirting with her." I said, I'm thinking, it's fourth grade. I'm like, "Are you sure they're flirting with her? Like, maybe they're just being friendly or whatever." He's all, "Mom, I'm a boy. I know what flirtings look like, and they are not just being friendly. They are flirting with her." And I just, it warms my heart to know that, her sibling, her younger brother was looking out for her even on the playground and even at school. And again, it's that teaching young men, you should be protective of the women in your life, the women that you love. And there should be a time where you're going to stand up and stand up for her. And he did a few times, kind of thing. So you always picture the older brother doing that for a little sister, but I didn't realize that, that it really is something that God had placed even in his design from the very beginning to be protective of his sister and his mother. And then later on, it's going to be his wife, so
Yes.
pretty awesome. Mitch, I really applaud you for absolutely obeying and walking by faith in the Lord, and just, answering that call, because so many times we hear those whispers and those nudges. And because sometimes, sometimes it's a small thing, and sometimes we're easy to justify, "Oh no, somebody else can do that."
Right.
I don't have time for this, or that sort of thing. But yet you were obedient and did it. So I can only imagine that it is just going to bless and impact so many lives. So keep going. You guys go to justaddwilderness.com. Get a hold of Mitch. He is an incredible man of God, as you can see. Share this out if you're watching on the replay. Get his message out and get his book when it's out. Go ahead and order the pre-launch so that you will get your first copy there. Mitch, as we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to leave us with?
Oh, that's a good one. I think just a theme of just identify your non-negotiables in life. Really sit down if you haven't thought about that before, but what are the principles you stand on? It's so easy to kind of have quasi principles of things that you agree with, that you mentally can get there. But what are those kind of non-negotiables that this is the foundations, these are the pillars for you, for yourself, for your family, and maybe have that discussion of say, what are the kind of the core principles that we have? And then everybody will have more confidence of knowing kind of what those boundaries are, what those limits are, but what those strikes are of what you stand for.
Oh, fantastic, Mitch. Thank you for taking the time out of your really busy schedule to share your heart and to share what you're doing. I wish you all the best. You absolutely are an American dream maker. Please continue to do so, because, part of the American dream is being able to freely grow and develop who you are, not just your business, but who you are as a person, who you are spiritually, all of that. And so, embrace the freedom as an American and continue, everyone, to have that growth. Until we do not have life in us, there's always room for improvement for each and every one of us, because that is what's going to make this a better place. That's where change really happens, is when we can change ourselves first. Right?
Amen. Amen.
So thank you again,
Absolutely.
Mitch, and love having you here. Just add wilderness.com. Mitch, I will see you in just a little bit. Don't go away. I'm going to say goodbye to our guests, and I'll be right with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for joining us today on American Dream Makers. And again, if you're watching this on a replay, we'd love to hear from you and share this out. What a great message. And get signed up with the things that Mitch is doing. Men, it's going to change your lives, change your world. And it's just going to help you become a better leader, even if you are already a great leader. So just encourage you to have a wonderful, blessed day. And until next time, we will see you soon.